Now that Pasipamire and Lobengula had agreed on all the terms, they began the ceremony to make their agreement binding. In modern times, people use signatures and contracts to signify a binding agreement, but among the Africans, deals were made binding through traditional ceremony. Agreements were represented by symbolic gifts called miko, and so Lobengula presented Pasipamire with a gift of a fine leopard skin pelt. Back in these times, only the richest and the most powerful people, the monarchs, the kings and queens, reserved the right to wear leopard skin. The pelt given to Pasipamire by Lobengula represented acknowledgement on Lobengula's part that Pasipamire was the new ruler and authority over Dungwiza. After the ceremony was complete, Lobengula announced to his people how he had secured a deal that would guarantee food security for the Ndebele kingdom. He told them that the threat of hunger would be a thing of the past, and so the people rejoiced and celebrated this very good news. Lobengula and Pasipamire drank to celebrate their new union, and the people celebrated through dance and music, and they drank to their heart's content. Pasipamire also sang a song to praise the makers of the king's brew. The only obstacle that remained was how Pasipamire was going to take over the throne of Dungwiza, now that he had insisted that Lobengula not interfere in that affair. Lobengula had wanted to send forth his troops to assassinate and slaughter the entire royal family and their lineage, leaving the throne of Dungwiza vacant for Pasipamire to occupy. But Pasipamire did not want any blood on his hands, and so he said no to this proposal and insisted that he himself would find a way that doesn't involve bloodshed. Lobengula didn't know how Pasipamire was going to usurp the throne, but he had no doubt that Pasipamire would be able to accomplish the task. After all, he was the great spirit of Chaminuka. And so, after a brief stay, it was time for Pasipamire to return to Dungwiza if he was to fulfill the agreement he had made with Lobengula. And so Pasipamire returned home bearing news of immense magnitude, both good and bad. On the one hand, he had struck a deal exempting his people from the generations-long burden of giving up their hard-earned harvests to the Ndebele, and he was soon to be married to Lobengula's daughter, the most beautiful maiden he had ever seen. But on the other hand, if it was all to be fulfilled, he had to commit treason and unseat the current king of Dungwiza, Motsepe. On his journey back home, Pasipamire reached to the great spirit of Chaminuka to ask for wisdom on how to accomplish this mammoth task of deposing a monarch which was before him. The spirit told Pasipamire to be true to himself and to everyone involved, and that the task he thought was his own burden to carry was in fact not his burden to carry alone, but together Pasipamire and King Motsepe must shoulder this burden, and together, only together, will they come up with a solution to the problem before them. When Pasipamire finally reached Dungwiza, he immediately went to consult with the King Motsepe. The two of them had enjoyed a good relationship since that year when Pasipamire had saved the kingdom of Dungwiza from the ruin brought about by the season's long drought. The king had been indebted to Pasipamire ever since, but had not managed to find a way to pay back Pasipamire for the great deed that he had done. Pasipamire laid bare the facts before the king of Dungwiza about all that had occurred while he was with the warrior king of the Ndebele. And after hearing what Pasipamire had to say, Motsepe realized something crucial: that Pasipamire had saved him and the entire royal family. If Pasipamire had not insisted that there be no bloodshed, Lobengula would not have hesitated to send his armies to kill them all in cold blood. And so Motsepe thanked Pasipamire for saving him once again. Motsepe, along with his advisors, the Machindas, and Pasipamire, sat down together in a rite called Mushandira Pamwe and began to ponder a solution. In the end, they came up with a fair solution that averted the need for bloodshed. Pasipamire was to be named Mambo and ruler of the land. Everything natural above and below the ground, the waters and rivers of the land, were now under the authority and belonged to Pasipamire. This left the politics of the kingdom of Dungwiza intact and gave Pasipamire authority to rule over what happens with the land. This was also good to Pasipamire because, as a person, he had never had any interest in lording over people. With this solution in place, Pasipamire now wondered if what they had done would be enough to appease Lobengula and bring about a new era of peace among the different tribes.
Oh, yeah.